All right,
Silly
we're
person.
going to get to congressional candidate in Florida, um, George George George. How do I say your last name again?
It's
George.
Moraitis, John. Good morning. Thanks for
Thank you,
having me on
George.
again.
I didn't want to mangle it. George Moraitis running in Florida again. Speaking a what's his name? The little guy. What's his name
Running
again?
against Jared Moskowitz is the incumbent, and again, it's our best chance to pick up a seat for the party here. We look to
Right,
hold the majority.
little Jeremy Moskowitz, whatever his name is,
Jared,
like
yeah.
5'2", and they got a. He has an aide that follows around with a stand so he can stand on it when he's on TV. Look, I'm not. That's just what the guy's height is, but it is what it is. But he's another total libtard. Submarine commander, you are. I've got you're here with John and Ox. Um, how do we open up the straits?
Well, a couple of things we can do. The main thing it would obviously be to protect against mines being laid, and then obviously missiles. Those are the two biggest threats. The Navy's largely been neutralized. There's always a submarine threat. I was actually a lieutenant on the submarine. I did retire as a lieutenant commander, but there's always a submarine threat. We've got ways to prevent that from happening. We've got lots of planes out there, lots of buoys, lots of subs. But neutralizing the missile threat is really the biggest thing to keeping the strait open ultimately.
So, but what is the risk there? They're saying that there's mountainous ridges over the straits, and
Right.
there's Iranian fighters with rocket launchers that can sink a tanker.
Sure.
Explain how that works.
Well, right. I mean, again, just like anything, sometimes we watch a lot of movies and we think, a satellite can see every single square inch of land, and a plane can as well. But the reality is that people are hiding in caves or putting missile launchers in place that we can't see them until they want to pop out and launch. So, there's obviously going to be air patrols over the strait, lots of air patrols, lots of satellite, lots of everything. But it's still going to come down to just like anything. You have to be able to quickly react when something happens. So it is dangerous, but oil has to flow through that strait. We also have the ability, like President Trump has said, to inflict even more damage on Iran. I think we've been restrained in doing that in terms of taking down their infrastructure beyond sort of the leadership and the nuclear facilities, things like that. But obviously, we can unleash even more damage on Iran to deter that and prevent that from happening.
Ox, what is your vision of how this war ends?
Yeah, great question. I would have said something different a week ago. The only comment that I've got on this is how have we been able to decimate them to this point, and the regime seems to be as strong as ever? Where are the people in Iran rising up? My concern is that there's a faction of Iranians that aren't seeking this freedom and that like the old ways. And the fact that we're not seeing this huge, parade, toga party, whatever you want to call it, of all these people rising up and taking over their streets makes me very nervous. So I see this ending. I mean, at worst case scenario, their nuclear capabilities, their military capabilities are diminished probably for the rest of our lifetimes. And if that's all it ends up being, we save the world.
You want to weigh in on that, George?
Sure. I would say, regime change, and Ox, to your point, I don't think the Iranian people are armed. And so that's really what the problem is. They don't have, as someone has said, they don't have the Second Amendment. So there's really there's really no way to arm them without getting in boots on the ground. We're very reluctant to do that as a country. I do see the end game as being Iran has to irrevocably give up the nuclear capabilities and the missile capabilities. Whether or not still have their theocracy or become sort of more of a military strongman type of arrangement, it's got to be something that can work with the United States. So, and that's the bottom line. They can't have a nuclear weapon. We're going to have inspectors to verify that at some point. But whatever that regime looks like, it's going to have to allow for that.
Ox, let's get to the midterms here. It appears right now that if we don't get out of Iran relatively quickly, and they laid 4 objectives out: destroy their nuclear capability for the foreseeable future. I think we're about there. Get rid of their ballistic missile capability, eradicate that. We're about there. Sink their entire navy down to the rowboats, probably 80% there, and then cut their money off so they can't fund their parasite affiliates, Hamas,
Right.
Hezbollah, and the Houthis. And we're there because they can't get the oil out.
Mhm.
So why not just finish the job, sink the Navy, get every ballistic missile they can, comes to the end of March, and just declare victory and get out and protect the Straits, and that's it. Why can't we do that?
My comment on that is, forgive me for maybe being cynical, but of course the agenda was regime change. That's why we targeted the Ayatollah and all those other people when they were having lunch. So I know they keep saying that the goal is not regime change, but it is. And short of that happening, I think the world's going to wonder what this was. But John, yeah, that's the exit strategy. They did not lay that out as an explicit objective, so they can certainly declare victory. But it's got to it has to be lasting. You can't walk away from this thing without having concrete conclusion on Iran's threat. So that's the trick. As soon as they figured that that's happening, yeah, I hope they would leave for sure. We can't be there like we were in any other conflicts we've ever had before.
George, how do we get out of this thing?
I do think the end game's going to be a little messy, to be perfectly honest, John and Ox. I don't. I think Ox is right. Without really a regime change, I don't see how we could effectively declare victory and really assure ourselves in the world that there's not going to be another attempt to gain a nuclear weapon. We have to get inspectors on the ground. That's going to be part of it. And so Iran is going to have to accept that we're going to have some monitoring of that, whether it's the United States or the international community, the IAEA, something is going to have to be there. And so there's going to, I don't think the exact current regime, the current people running it are going to be the ones running it. It is up to the Iranian people who they have running their country ultimately, obviously, but they can't acquire a nuclear weapon. That's our interest in it. All those other things you mentioned are happening, but them not acquiring that nuclear weapon, the end game is going to be tough, and it's going to involve some presence on the ground, not armed, but just to monitor that they don't have it.
Well, we've been doing that for 5 decades, so there's really no change there. And you got the IDF. I don't think you're going to get regime change. I don't think we need it. There's not going to be a puppet government. This is not Delcy Rodriguez that basically Trump tells her what to do or they kill her. It's a little bit different. These are religious fanatics. So you're not going to get what you could get in Cuba and have with Venezuela in Iran. So I just think if this thing drags on into April and May, I think we're going to get wiped out, George, in November. It's also going to affect any ability that you have to win that seat dissipates every more month we're in there. Met your objectives, declare victory, get out, focus on domestic policy, George.
Yeah, the American people don't like long wars. We've not had a lot of success with them, frankly, over the last 50 years. So I agree with you, John. We need to finish. We need to get to an end game and get it. But this is like an existential threat to our country to have a country like this with nuclear weapons. So although it maybe involves some pain, I agree. The sooner it's over, politically, the better it is. But we do have to finish the job in terms of stopping the nuclear weapon of Iran. So
George,
I agree with you, though. You're correct.
George, people want to. I have to get out. People want to follow your campaign. Where do they go?
Great. Thank you, John. I appreciate it. I appreciate all your encouragement in my campaign. It's to get to our campaign website is George, the number 4, Congress.com, and on X it's George R. Moraitis.
George, you gotta win this seat. This is probably one of 5 seats we can pick up. Probably number 1 on my radar screen. That's why I have you on a lot.
Thank you, John.
You got to win this race. First of all, you got to win the primary because you're the best candidate, and then you got to win this seat back. And it also is critical to growing the Republican brand and status in Broward County, which you guys have done a super job. So you're one of my top candidates for victory. That's why we have you on. So thanks for being with us.
Thank you, John. Appreciate it. Ox, good meeting you as well. And God bless you guys. And thanks for all you do for the cause.
Ox, I'll see you next week. My love to your lovely wife, Jan, and we'll talk soon. You're on the John Fredericks Media Network with your calls when I get back.